I came across you personally at the Symposium for Metabolic Health in San Diego. We didn't actually get to connect in person, unfortunately, but you gave an amazing presentation about type 1 diabetes. Before we deep dive into that and into your own personal story, I'm just curious, like, how was your experience in San Diego at the symposium? What did you think of it?
So it was a unique opportunity where I could actually drive to this because I'm actually in Santa Barbara, California right now. And so
Oh,
being able to drive to a conference like that, and if no one's been to California, it is frankly so beautiful. And so it was a pleasant 3.5, 4 hour drive. Really love that. And it's a unique conference. And we were talking a little bit about this offline before. When you think about these massive conferences, there's neuroscience, experimental biology, American Diabetes Association. You can choose any mainstay institutional conference that might be out there, and you're talking like tens of thousands of people who attend these, and these are kind of the big go-tos for a lot of people in a respective field. But in those conferences, you're in some of the biggest conference centers in the entire United States. San Diego, Chicago, Orlando, the list goes on, and then you really lose the opportunity to really connect one-on-one with people. And we do research a lot of times on the impact nutrition has and lifestyle, such as exercise, on health, disease, and performance, with a particular interest on all the way from diseases such as diabetes, people at risk for, people living with it, because I also live with type 1, but also the most elite level performers, talking about operator performers like those who are astronauts and/or special forces communities. So we span the gamut, and with a real key focus on the idea of actually taking research and translating it to real world application. It's one thing to study these things and get into the nitty gritty of how something works, or if you see a key metric of change. We actually want to do things that we think could actually make a meaningful difference and translate research to action. So that's something it's pertinent to me. And what I find in a conference revolving, this was the Metabolic Health Symposium, and it's a low carb focus. And we've done research on low carb for a decade or more now. At least I have, specifically, many others there who have done this for much longer. And it just gives you a really fun opportunity to meet with other people who are focused on that topic and learn from their experience, both personally and from other researchers in the space. And it really helps you take a more focused approach to some of the nuances within nutrition and how it spans, not just for, in my case, when I talked about type 1 diabetes. I didn't get a chance to talk about our performance work there, but just type 1, but also see how nutrition has far-reaching implications on other disease states. And I find that to be a really cool experience, which inevitably guarantees that you have one-on-one interactions with many of the conference goers. And that's a special opportunity. It takes it away from a purely academic experience to a really one-on-one personal experience. And those are a very special place, especially having gone to virtually every type of conference there is. These are the fun ones.
Wow, that's really cool. One thing that I've observed is exactly what you're explaining, like the connections. And it's interesting to see doctors connecting with doctors, and they're associating with each other, and they're asking each other interesting questions. Lay people like myself connecting with other lay people and trying to understand what people's stories are and meeting new people and that kind of thing. And also the interaction between the two, like lay people being able to, talk to Georgia Ede, for example, like, give me a break. Like, she was giving everybody, 5 to 10 minutes to just chat her up about anything as she was doing her book signings. And it's incredible to have that interaction. And I'm really curious, since you have had that type of experience in all types of conferences, I've been to a few different ones as well. What is the difference in the energy level in the conference? Because presumably everybody in this conference was low carb, ketogenic, carnivore, whatever. I look around on Saturday. It's a beautiful day in San Diego. Like you said, it's an amazing place. Everybody's there. Nobody left to go to the beach, and everybody is super engaged. Like an hour or two after lunch, everybody's sitting there quietly, patiently after hours and hours of very complex presentations. What do you notice about like the energy itself, regardless of whatever the content is in this conference versus, say, like a normal like medical conference that you'd attend?
Usually when you go to a normal medical conference, you have like seating for like 300 to 1,000 people, sometimes 10,000 people, and well, thousands of people, maybe 10,000 might be exaggeration, in one single spot. And so it's, I don't want to call it stale, but you're not really getting kind of that energetic interaction, because just like we're sitting here talking to each other, it's virtual, it's not actually in person, but you get a feeling, there's just a known response to the engagement of one person to another in person that has a positive impact, usually, unless it's a negative interaction, it usually has a positive impact on your lived experience in that moment. And so it's uncomparable, because there's no way you're going to know all 10,000 people in one of these massive conferences. And so you're kind of walking past people. You hope to catch someone and have that kind of intimate one-on-one interaction, and it's meaningful on a personal level that extends beyond just what you're learning. And at a conference like that, it's inevitable that you interact one-on-one with individuals who deeply care about what you're talking about. It's not just it just takes it to another level. So yeah, the energy, with quotes around it, because it define energy however you want to. It's just it's an uplifting experience that you can really get to connect with people, and so I thoroughly enjoy those experiences.
Pretty special to see Dave Feldman, of all people, stepping up to the microphone to ask you a question and offer his congratulations on your amazing work. That had to be quite meaningful for you.
Yeah, so Dave, it's interesting. So a lot of people who probably listen to your podcast, and many who probably don't know of Dave, but it's interesting. Dave, my understanding is the very first conference Dave attended, where he was starting to approach people and try to, hey, look, I have this interesting data. I could be wrong, Dave, correct me here if I am, but he went to the metabolic health, now called the Summit, but it was actually a different global, I forget what they called it before, but it was run by someone named Angela Puff, and now Victoria. And but this was like years back, like almost a half decade back, when this was the first one ever. It was in Tampa with Dom D'Agostino, and he was involved in that. That's why I was in his lab. And Dave came up to me at that conference, like on the side, the first or second day, and said, hey, look, I have these really interesting lipid data. It just goes all over the map whenever I eat these foods. Like, I don't think it's consistent. At this point, I was hyper focused on nutrition as a disease mitigation strategy. And of course, you come out the gate almost immediately appreciating, if you study anything about ketogenic diets, that when you flip from a very high carbohydrate based approach, which most people are doing, to a low carbohydrate strategy, you see these changes in lipids. We can talk more about this when we talk about fat oxidation and gas exchange, and the term you use is metabolic card. But you appreciate there's this wide sweeping change in lipids. And so he was essentially getting at this idea that, oh man, I'm seeing these crazy changes. And we had many discussions in the lab at this point about obviously this widespread lipid change, but obviously this increase in LDL that's a common point of discussion around these diets, because there's all this positive data coming out at this point. I mean, this is when you go on Google Trends, and ketogenic diet not only outcompeted every other type of diet on Google Trends, it was hitting a peak moment at that stage. And so, we were contemplating a lot of the what you were learning from the people out in the community about why you should or shouldn't consider one of these approaches. And so he came up with an interesting conversation around lipids. And, I'm being totally honest with you. When someone comes up to you and says, I have zero research experience whatsoever, I just see these crazy changes on a personal level, I was like, that's incredible, because that's actually what got me into science. If I'm being totally frank, I have type 1 diabetes, and that's why I became so fascinated with going to the depths with this. But when he was speaking to me, I was like, hey, let me introduce you to a few people over here who are really ingrained on that topic. And I believe that was the first conference he ever attended, and kind of jumped in face first. And I don't know if I was the first person he spoke to at the conference, but I remember passing him to introductions to a few people there, and then come to see where he is now. And the impact that him and the research that he has actually generated that has touched on such a key topic is kind of insane, to be honest with you. And credit to him for what he's done with those last, what it seems like 5-6 years at this point, and made a massive impact.
Dude, if I could go back and record that initial conversation between the two of you, and like you said, like the implications of that one conversation, whoever you must have introduced him to, like what that led to now, looking back and what that will lead to in the future, it's absolutely staggering. What a special moment. It's such a cool thing to look back on.
I can't take, I don't want to take any credit from him because he was so clearly on a mission that it would have been me or someone else. And again, I don't even know if I was the first person. I just know that when he came and spoke to me, I'm like, hey, go speak to this person and this person who was intimately tied to the changes in lipids and its impact on overall health. But I remember at that conference, he was dead set, man. And so I don't think it would have, if it wasn't me, it was going to be someone else. So